And a very good evening to you, and welcome to this evening's edition of Politics 101. We're into the month of October. The month of October, of course, has a lot of political significance for Guyana, the wider Caribbean. It was in October 1953 when the British invaded Guyana. We were still a colony of Britain at the time, and in the context of the Cold War, we had just elected our first government under the new limited self-government that was part of the decolonization process. And the original People's Progressive Party was formed. It turned out to be a coalition of forces, a coalition of ethnic forces. Some would say a coalition of class forces. Some would say a coalition of middle-class individuals. Whatever it was, they won. The then PPP won the first government, the first election, on the self-government in October 1950. Well, not October 1953. They won the election, I think it was in May 1953. But in October 1953, after 133 days in office, the government was deposed. The British invaded the colony, spurred on by the Americans. The fear was that in the context of the Cold War, the government could have gone communist, and that, of course, was not where the large Western countries were going, and in the context of the Cold War, that was a no-no in a hemisphere that the Americans saw as part of its backyard. So October 1953, of course, Guyana was invaded, the government was disposed of. Some leaders were locked up. The long and short of it was that in 1955, 2 years later, the original PPP split. Then there was another quick split in 1956. By the time we got to 1957, 58, the country was split along ethnic lines. We had two PPPs later on to become the PPP and the PNC. And in many regards, the country has not recovered from what happened in those 133 days of 1953. Of course, ending in October of 1953 with the invasion of the country. In 1968 October, a young man, young professor, began teaching at the University of the West Indies, wanted to teach African history, did not get to teach it, went into the ghettos, the countryside, and began to quote unquote teach African history. And as he said, learned from African people in Jamaica about the African past and African history. That was enough in the context of the Cold War again to cause suspicions on the part of the Jamaican government. He then left and went to a writers' conference in Canada. And when he came back to Jamaica, he was prevented from landing. And the next day, students from the University of the West Indies started marching to town, and they looked at the crossroads. They looked in the opposite direction, and another crowd was coming from the other direction. They did not know what it was. And when the two crowds met at the four corners, as it turned out, they were both marching for the same thing. The banning of Dr. Walter Rodney from Jamaica. As a result of that march came what is known as the Rodney riots. And that encounter, political scientists and Caribbeanists call the beginning of the Black Power movement in the English-speaking Caribbean. That was October 1968. And then in October 1992, after a long stint in office beginning in 1964, in partnership, in coalition with the United Force, and then later on by itself, the People's National Congress reign, 64 to 92, 28 years, came to an end electorally, as the Cold War ended. The Cold War again, the Cold War ended. And so the dynamics that kept the PNC in government for 28 years have changed. And it occasioned what we call free and fair elections, open elections, as they say. One of us to be very careful about using that term, free and fair. But there were elections in October 1992, and the People's National Congress was deposed, and the PPP, the Jaggonite PPP, came back to office in October 1992. Many observers, many political scientists thought we had come to the end of authoritarianism, and that we would now move into a period of democracy. And of course, lots of people were relieved that the quote-unquote authoritarian regime of the PNC had gone, and we had now moved into a new era. Of course, here we are almost 30 years later, 29 years later, and we have learned over that period of time that the removal of one authoritarian government does not necessarily lead to democracy. Democracy theorists have argued that you can remove an authoritarian regime, and one of the possibilities is that you can arrive at another authoritarian regime. That is, you remove the government, but the regime, the authoritarian regime, remains in place. The new party that takes government governs in the same way, and in many regards, or in some regards, it can intensify the authoritarianism that it purportedly fought and gotten rid of. So here we are, 29 years after the so-called end of the authoritarian period, or the authoritarian PNC regime. And here we are talking about authoritarianism, talking about domination, talking about dictatorship, and as Dr. Henry Jeffery, talking about autocracy. All of these terms, we thought in 1992, October, that we had finished with. We were now moving into this golden era of democracy. Dr. Jeffery is here with us this evening. Dr. Jeffery, along with, I'm trying to remember his colleague, Mr. Barber, Dr. Barber, actually wrote a book on authoritarianism and looked at the authoritarianism under the PNC. And Dr. Jeffery himself has a collection of essays talking about authoritarianism and domination. So this is a subject that he knows a lot about, that he has studied. And so tonight we are going to be talking about this big picture. You know, we spend a lot of time, understandably, dealing with the day-to-day issues, all the developments that happens on a day-to-day basis. Tonight we are going to change gears a little bit and talk about the big picture. Talk about this democracy and dictatorship and autocracy and all of these things, and try to make sense for you about what we are dealing with. So welcome to today's edition of our Politics 101. And we are going to be doing some Politics 101 tonight. So welcome. Dr. Jeffery, welcome.
Thank you very much, David. Good seeing you again.
Yes, it's been a while, and I've been inundated from my viewers about you being missing in action. So I was determined to get you on tonight. As I said in the introduction, this October happens to be a month of historical happenings as far as Guyana and English speaking countries in the speaking Caribbean are concerned. Any initial thoughts on that?
Well, yes, but only insofar that the expected outcomes are never what they become. And it is largely a result of a whole lot of misconceptualizations and building of expectations that are not necessarily tied to the kind of activities you're going into. For instance, before 1992 elections, we used to say things like, "Oh, no development without democracy." But that wasn't necessarily true. That might have been true for Guyana, but China was going to develop. It ain't got no particular. By democracy, we meant liberal democracy.
Liberal democracy, yeah.
Right. We meant democracy where you have open voting, where you have opposition. China. Look at Singapore, even. I mean, it developed faster than Guyana in the 60s. People never. I don't think a lot of people sit down to realize that when Singapore moved away from Malaysia, it moved into an homogeneous country of about 90% Chinese, and it stayed with Malaysia. God knows what would happen there. And therefore, Guyana and countries like Guyana are set in a framework, must be set in a framework where you have ethnic disassociation, ethnic problems, and so on. So when we talk about development and would not take place in countries without a democracy. What we are talking about essentially is, or you have to specify where you're talking about, because China developed, where's the big democracy? A liberal democracy, but Soviet Union developed, even Singapore developed. Where's the big democracy? So effectively, and then you have to go and say, what do you mean by this thing, democracy? I mean, we can have a narrow definition of democracy by saying what democracies mean is that we must have elections and they must be free and fair. I even go that far and say free and fair elections, and a party must win. Right, and we accept that the party won the election. If it's that what you mean by democracy, as the political scientists, as you pointed out, Samuel Huntington, even before Huntington, the year I went to university in around 1973, Dahl was publishing his book about plutocracy. So effectively, what you have is a government in power, but it is as I said in some of the things, it's a government without any moral content. You have a government, you can win election, majority rule, let's say. You can win elections by having majority ethnic rule and then go and rule the country for your ethnicity and leave me out. I'm not saying that's what happened in Guyana necessarily, but I want to go to the extreme to show you that you can have majority rule. That means that essentially I'm locked out. So for me, democracy would not be good. Democracy, there's been nothing nice about democracy if you define it strictly in terms of majority rule. Look, indeed, India that we are talking about. India divided into India and Pakistan and the others, largely because Jinnah and the Muslims decided that they are not going to live in India and be subjective to Hindu majority rule. The British wanted, well, there is discussed in the literature whether or not the division suited the British or not, but essentially the British put forward a single India. Gina and its people start saying, no, we're not going to be subjective to Hindu rule. And therefore, under no circumstances, you must put us in a situation in which we are the minority. And that would mean the country got to be divided. Effectively, similarly, look at Cyprus. Up to today, they say Cyprus is one country, but it's divided between Greek Cypriot and the Turkish Cypriots. So we have that sort of a thing. So in itself, democracy is not well, if you define it as majority rule or holding election and winning election, not necessarily a good thing. And political theorists, as I said, Samuel Huntington recently, Dahl way back, knew this. And therefore, today, when we come to talk about democracy, we must talk about the democracy that has a moral content. And now you have a V Democracy, a group that came together in about 2014, and they start developing concepts of democracy. And today, for instance, the Americans, you would have thought they're the top of the Democratic list, is about number 16 in the list.
On that list, yes.
Yes, only about 4 above Barbados.
Yeah.
You understand me? So most of those people, most of the countries on that list are essentially the European countries. And that is because they said, hey, free and fair election is as Huntington going to say, it's a necessary criteria for democracy, but it is not the only criteria, and it's not the only moral good. It's a good, but it's not the only moral good that society wants. Society wants participation of people in they want discussions about what's taking place and all of that. They want freedoms in other ways. I think it was Jean-Jacques Rousseau way back who said it must be a notion of the general will.
The general will,
rather
yes.
than the will of all. The will of all would seem to be majority rule, but a general will seems to be, and I'm no expert, I'm none of these things I'm saying, so please. But what I'm saying to you is that a general will seems to be a view of man, that is over and above what majority or minority wants. And he was trying to say, in my view, that is what essentially society should be attempting to do. So today, when we talk about autocracy, we don't say dictatorship no more. Well, at the end, there's an autocratic regime that is not, has no, it's not comfortable to the people of the country, but what we normally call dictatorship. And at the other end, we have liberal democracy. That would be the better end, in which we all are involved, in which we all can participate, in which we are able to voice our opinions, not just voice, because you can voice your like if nobody and taking you on. So not only voice of your opinion, but get your opinion heard and implemented and all that stuff. Where you have constraint, where you have forbearance. They said the essence of democracy outside of any elections and all that is this thing about constraint and forbearance. When I think it was Al Gore and Bush situation, Al Gore could have gone the lengths and quarreled with Bush about the elections and all of that, but he backed off. That is the kind of he backed off and say, all right, you want this, but it's not necessarily that he accepted what Bush did. So in a democratic situation, you still have certain what you'll call soft issues, what we call moral issues, that must be properly understood. Now, where is Guyana on that list? Guyana?
All right, that's where you're coming to. Where's Guyana? Let me take you back to 1990. As I said in my introduction, that in 1992 we thought we had come to the end of a dictatorship, as we said at that time, and that we were entering this period of democracy. 29 years later, we are reviewing that because, as you said, we have today an autocratic a government that is accountable to nobody, that is behaving in nowhere different or better than the PNC regime that was deposed in 1992. What accounts for, first of all, our thinking in 1992 that we had come to the end of dictatorship? And what has happened from 1992 to the present?
Because you had a false idea about democracy. You thought when we spoke of democracy in 1992, we spoke of it as something that existed in Britain and all of those things with years of experience in it. We weren't one of the best variables in any speaking to democracy is, of course, elections. And once we thought you had elections, we said that was democracy. But those countries got many other things, as I said just now. You got to have forbearance. You have to have all sorts of other people participating in various ways. You have to have the election. People's voices, they have to be listened to. You have to have open all sorts of transparency. You can't wake up a morning here. The environmental agency just decide, oh, there is not necessary anymore. An environmental permit not a thing anymore. They're supposed to put that in the press. Henry Jeffery, he has applied for environmental permit to do X things here. We have looked at this and we believe it's not necessary, and we are open to discourse on this matter. That needs to be done for all the populations around to say things. You just can't say that and then I'm giving you that as a simple example.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we did not understand properly what was meant. We thought it meant all the moral characteristics thing. Today, 92 is when Huntington was making his point that democracy is not necessarily the only good you have in any political society. A democratic society can be bad unless it has the other values, people participation, and all those things. Mm-hmm. So what we are having since 92 is essentially a kind of democratic, we got voting, but voting is about that. We are not having the other contents of a democratic society. People participation, dialogue in any sensible way. We are always having to quarrel about whether or not you're listening to the trade unionists, whether or not you're listening to the private sector and all of that. And people are colluding all over the place. So effectively, we are where we are because we did not understand that what we have is democracy in the sense defined as elections, but not democracy defined as liberal democracy.
All right, let's talk about elections, because one of the charges against the PNC regime was that it did not allow free and fair elections. And then later on, we said free and fair elections, free from fear. Have we solved the problem of free and fair elections after 1990? After 1992, we were supposed to be moving into a period of free and fair election. 29 years later, have we solved that problem?
Well, obviously, 2020 showed you. Well, not even 2020, 2015. After the PNC was declared the winner of the election in 2015, the leader of the PPP, Mr. Jack Joe, got up and said essentially the PNC rigged the elections.
Yes. Mr. Ramatar said the same thing.
He even said he want a new list.
Yes.
He even said that he started realizing how the list would work for him. He said, I want a new election list, and he went. So effectively, we haven't solved it even when the PNC came to power. I have always during that period quoted the period that Mr. Jaguar was saying, former President Jaguar was saying, The PNC rigged election. I could not say that the PNC rigged election. I had no proof. I think I got proof now. Because nobody wants to deal with the numbers Lowenfield put it out there. I think there are proof on the table now. I didn't have proof, and I always used to say, because I believed him. That was the problem. I believed him. And as you said, the matter was never closed. The matter was never closed. It's still not closed today. You can run and hide as far as you like. There are numbers on the table that show that the elections were manipulated.
And you're talking there about the 2020 elections.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. Until you deal with those numbers, what are we talking about? But as I said, you can even have that kind of arrangement and a government out of that, even whatsoever, PPP, whatsoever, and yet they can be bad governments.
Yes.
I mean, they can be bad governments. Tell me about it. I've known that for some time. I have criticized both of them for being bad governments in the context of wanting to be a liberal democracy. And it's a liberal democracy we are all anchoring after, by the way. Not just majority rule.
Right.
It's a liberal democracy. We're not just trying to get majority rule, because, what is minority rights? And how much right does a minority has? As I pointed out just now with India and Gina. Gina said, look, we are in Muslims. Right now, there are 200 million. Right now, the Hindus now must be 1.2 million or something. And he was saying then, there was still a minority, but 31 million or something then. And they were saying, no, we want our country by ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Henry, let me ask you this, because I think it's important. Under the spotlight is the PPP government.
Yes.
And recently, no other than Donald Ramotar said that the PPP is no longer a Marxist-Leninist party. And I think he was supported by Clement Roy. But I know Donald did say that. What is it about the PPP of 2021 that is different from, let's say, the PPP of 1991, 1990?
The PPP,
if there is any difference.
Oh, no. There is no question that the PPP is no longer a Marxist-Leninist party in the sense that they intended to build no socialist society. That is about it. The goal is essentially what you will want in a bourgeois liberal democratic situation. That is the goal. They're not going after any de-alienation of the people and all of that. If that occurs, it will occur in the context of more or less a normally developing society. The problem is that you must differentiate the goal of socialism from the praxis of it. Lenin made a bundle of nonsense or mistakes, let me say. When Leninism made it, if I can say that, because that might not be right, maybe you have to personalize things like that. Because the minute you start speaking to dictatorship of the proletariat in the sense of meaning some simple party, and then you put it under some concept called democratic centralism, which means essentially that the lower groups can discuss and come to the next use and they discuss. But when you come to the higher group, the discussion finish. That is still the PPP. So the PPP has a hierarchical situation that allows people to discuss at the lower level, but the major decisions are made at the top without much reference to what's happening at the bottom. Look, a good example of this is our president, Orphan. The last of the party didn't want anything to do with Orphan. If the PPP had lost that election, most of them would have said, we told you. So effectively, They did not want but orphan end up being there, regardless of what the whole bundle of the grassroots thought. In normal circumstances, as you rightly know, oligarchy controls these political parties.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are controlled by, that is normal. When you had democratic centralism to that, well, I know you're going. Normally, even the PNC oligarchy control what's going on. The couple people at the top, they control the agenda, they control all the books, the membership records, they know who will vote when, and they can do all sorts of miracles with that to keep themselves in office. Trade unions too, co-op societies too. So don't, no, these institutions, as Michelle rightly said, our oligarchy, the iron, what do you call it? The iron law of oligarchy. Don't matter. Anytime you have institutions like that, you will have these kind of people. Well, no, that's the iron law. You can't get rid of that. And Michelle wrote that since 1920 something. So, and then you have the Marxist, Leninist nonsense about democratic central. God bless you. The truth is that these people are, you are controlled by their top echelons. When the PNC attempted to do primaries, remember?
Yes, I remember. Yes.
I said, man, this is a good example. Let's go forward here. I mean, they weren't doing it in a way that maybe that most democratic way, but at least they were breaking away from sitting down in some small committee and determine who will run the country. So effectively, I said there, but after that first primary, have you ever seen another primary? Indeed, they have got so backward that the leader now believes he can sit down willy-nilly and determine what should happen, where and when, and who going to parliament. That's gone. Even I don't think even Jagdio can do that in the PPP.
Mm-hmm.
Without thinking and calling a meeting and discussing and so you know he would know how to maneuver that, and he'll have his support in the place and so on. Or all them used to do that. He'll have his support in the place, and then the determination will be made in their favor. But you can't wake up a morning and tell nobody that. I mean, you know why we are where we are because
Right. Right. Let's talk about what has happened since 2020, because you had a lot to say about the 2020 election. All of us did, because we saw signs there that said to us that the consequences here are going to be dire for the country. We have seen a lot in 1 year. I mean, I have not, in all my studies of Guyana's elections going back to 1953 coming forward, I have not seen this much acrimony in the first year after the election. Even you had 1997, where you think. But I think the last year here has been, we have not seen anything like that in Guyana before. Do you share that view?
well, let me say you mentioned the year, and around 1997, immediately you had a whole lot of thing that,
Yes.
and that was actual thing on the road and streets and all also. So I would say, but we. Uh, 1992, nothing of the sort.
Right.
1997, that kind of thing happened. I do not think that it's happened in 2001 to any large extent, and after that. So maybe 97 is an outlier in this kind of a thing. But I think that it has come home. Let me tell you something. I actually think that it has come home to the PPP. That essentially they cannot breach the ethnic divide. It comes home to everybody sooner or later, and that's why people tend to offer other forms of governance. During the constitutional discourse, people, even people around Guyana and all that, Jagan was offered shared governance. we can go somewhere with this kind of discourse because it begs a whole lot of other questions
Mm-hmm.
about the relationship there. But he did not take it. Cyprus. After all, I was always a bit confused about that. I said, Cyprus, why did the British, Cyprus and the situation in Cyprus was operating the same time as the Cyprus? And I was saying, why did they offer shared government like to Guyana at the offer? Later I found out. You see, you don't know everything anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, great. They were offered shared government. They did not take it. Therefore, what you are ending with, what you have in reality is a situation in which today the only way to deal with this, or let me say there are two ways. You share or you gotta fight to the death. Story done. Northern Ireland, you see what happened. At the end of the day, the Americans had to come in and people had to share.
Mm-hmm.
India, country divided. Maybe that's why Guyana and companies talk about dividing Ghana. Cyprus, country divided. Malaysia, you had to share. Fiji, there is some level of sharing, but there's a different story. Bansirama now is machinations. So effectively, that's your answer. You're gonna either have to fight to the death to stay in office and believe that by staying in office and winning election or manipulating election gonna make you a legitimate ruler. You're not gonna be legitimate.
You're not
Not
good.
even to the world.
Dr. Henry Jeffery here, we're talking about democracy and dictatorship and autocracy and the current PPP government. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to deal with some of the issues in the news over the last couple of months and get Dr. Jeffrey's take on them. Don't go anywhere. Politics 101 will be right back.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.
I'm David Hines, political activist and commentator. If you're looking for informed discussion on Guyanese politics, you must join me every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 6:30 on Politics 101 with Dr. David Hines. On that program, I interview policymakers, politicians, political activists on Guyanese politics in the past and the present. So make sure you tune in to Politics 101 on CAMS TV at 6:30 every Tuesday and Thursday. And on Mondays at 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 p.m., you can join me for Hindsight. On that program, I give my take on politics. And then you can call in and talk to me about the politics in Guyana, the Caribbean, and the rest of the world. That's Monday evenings at 7 o'clock. And so here we go. Monday, 7 o'clock, you can join me. On Tuesday at 6:30, Politics 101. On Thursdays at 6:30, Politics 101. And if you haven't That's enough of me by then. You can catch me on Tuesday mornings on the Buxtonian Morning Time with Kedaki Amsterdam, where we rap about politics also. And that's at 7 o'clock in the morning on Hams TV. All of these programs are on Hams TV. So catch me Monday, on Tuesday, on Thursday, and you get all you want to know about Chinese politics. Very much and welcome back to Politics 101, the Thursday edition. On next Tuesday, we're going to have that town hall meeting with Mr. Aubrey Norton, who is competing to become the leader of the People's National Congress. And he will be here to answer your questions. On Tuesday, we are working to get a registration link for you. So those of you who want to come in to the room to speak with Mr. Norton would be able to register to do so. We should have that done before the end of tonight. So please get ready for that town hall meeting on Tuesday with Aubrey Norton. We did say that persons wishing to get into the room can make a donation. I want to make it clear that that is not a prerequisite for getting into the room. So if you wish to get into the room but can't make a donation, please inbox me so that I can get your information and ensure that you get into the room. Some of you have already started to make donations and are also requesting that persons who are not able to make donations, that you are sponsoring them to get into the room. So donation is not a prerequisite to get into the room for the town hall meeting. If you wish to get into the room for the town hall meeting, please inbox me or inbox Brother Kedaki Amsterdam. I know he's easier to get onto than I am. Inbox Kedaki Amsterdam or inbox me if you wish to get into the room, but you're not in a position to donate. And of course, those of you who wish to donate can do so by the regular channels and then make your request known to me, whether you would like to sponsor somebody or who you would like to sponsor, and I'll make sure that that is done. So once again, that town hall meeting on Tuesday, we are hoping to get as many persons as possible into the room to chat with Mr. Norton. Of course, others who do not get to go into the room will be in the general audience. But those of you who get into the room will get to ask him questions. And as I said, those of you who can make a donation, please do so by the regular channels on the screen. You can, when you make your donation, sponsor people to get into the room. Just give me that information and they will get into the room. And those of you who are not able to make a donation, please contact Kedaki or myself, and we're going to ensure that you get into the room. So the donation is not a prerequisite. All right, let's get back to tonight's chat. And Dr. Henry Jeffery is here with us. And we have been talking about democracy and dictatorship, autocracy, and the like. Kind of general politics 101. Dr. Jeffery, there have been some developments over the last couple of weeks that I want to get your take on. First of all, the shooting, the murder of Orrin Boston. You've written on it, and you've linked it to this whole notion of autocracy. Give me your take on that incident.
Well, like most people, I would like to leave it to the police to do its investigation. But unlike most people, I believe that policemen only behave in that fashion because the system is permissive. The system that they're operating on is permissive. It allows all manner of accusations. But the people who are employing them are in court against the government who try to talk their own people up in this system. And therefore, when you have people behaving, even if you'd come and tell me that that person who shot Mr. Boston was simply scared and did it, I would say, why should he be scared? Why is he there perhaps in the first place? Why couldn't you just call Mr. Boston and said, come out? Why you are kicking down people's door in the first place in the 24th set? I mean, what's going on here? But the system is permissive. You're quarreling with different people to get all kinds of things happen. And the result is you have what you have. Kevin, I heard a man running some police down. Guys, I don't think I understand where this system is going. A man running down some police down the road and taking away his briefcase or his bag and going away with clothes or something. And nobody is there to help. Nobody here. These things telling you up there, all people are viewing the police. You can't have a system in where people are viewing the police as the enemy. You can't have it. It's not going to work. The history, if you read the history of the family, private property, and the state, written by, it was Lenin, you'll find that when the police were first introduced, they were actually, the people saw them as the enemy of the state, of the ordinary people, and just there to maintain property, private property, and so on. And people used to take off against them. You cannot have. Over the years, that has changed. And therefore, you cannot have a situation where the people are viewing the police itself as some sort of enemy. And therefore, I believe I will give them to see what they come out with. But it doesn't matter what they come out with, because I actually do believe that what occurred there should never occur, because perhaps they should never have been there. And it occurred, even if you put the best light on it, it occurred in a psychological context that we should have never allowed to get to this stage.
The observation has been made that the police tend to become much more trigger happy whenever the PPP is in office. Is that a fair conclusion?
I would say that, well, the first question you asked, the one about the state, the PPP does not believe that it controls the police in a fashion that it would like to control the police. And that goes without saying. And therefore, there's not the police so much as they are going to cultivate elements in the police that would feel that way. And no matter where you go in this world, you're always going to find elements going to feel. I think I wrote something on the Beckett syndrome. Remember Thomas Beckett?
Yes.
sat there and he said, well, Henry II sat there because he was in conflict with Thomas Becket over all sort of church thing and he's wanting to get married. And he sat there and they're drinking with some knights and he said, will someone rid me of this turbulent priest? Henry didn't mean for nobody to get up and go kill Becket. But a few nights around and get up and gone and get rid of Becket.
Yeah.
And when Henry had to do penance, all manner of things, go down on his knees and all that. But so I'm saying to you, the context is of major importance. And for me, the context always, more so when the PPP is in office, largely because they don't believe they control the police. The context has always been one that the police become more radical in terms of use of all sorts of what we call uncalled for means to deal with people.
We just had the burning down of the Brigham police station, and even before the fire was put out, the president himself began to politicize it. In the days following, we have had the so-called confession from a prisoner. Now we are hearing the prisoner saying that he was beaten. Long and short of it is that we have a fire in one of the main police stations, and then politics step in. Are you surprised?
I'm never surprised about most things that happen in Ghana. I'm surprised that you go and clean up the place so fast. If you have not really determined yet what happened there. You got some poor man, whether or not he did it or not, but the complications of him doing that. So, we getting sponged with all these sort of things to go apart. And when I read this, I said, this is too much for me. Maybe people who know about this should speak to it. But why would you go and clear up the whole place so fast? You need an investigation. How you want to investigate? I think Paul Slayer make this point. That you got to have serious people going along there to see what occurred. The only way, I can't find a reason why you would do it. Indeed, as I was driving here, coming to your program, I said, this is me. People stopped me on the street and said, well, what going on? I said, I don't understand. Please, you got to have proper forensic. And you ain't going to have proper forensic. Therefore, you will never know what really occurred. And since everybody seems to be questioning what this fella said, and now he's saying he did it on a duress, what are you left with? How you are? I would like Mr. Robeson Ben to come and tell this country how he's going to do a proper forensic investigation of what took place at there. How he's going to know? This man is saying he did not know. He was forced to make confessions and all that. He can't be satisfied with that because even all sorts of people has confessed to all sorts of things that they'd even done for all sorts of reasons. You had to have some backup evidence to support the case that he did do it. How can you do that now if you got people running all over the crime scene? This is, I have not been by the station. Maybe they're going to places where they can go and you can still do this, but I would like some assurance that this is what is occurring.
Dr. Jeffery, we have over the last couple of weeks, the COVID-19 temperature, the anti-vaccine and pro-vaccine temperature has gone down a bit, but we know it has not gone away. And some of us have been trying to tease out for the population the linkage between the anti-vaccine sentiments that grew to proportions that some of us did not expect. The linkage between that and the anti-government sentiment, the feeling that the government itself is not legitimate. Is that linkage justified?
Well, it is justified, but only in the sense that you are not talking to the other side. And therefore, the messages you are putting out are not sync synchronized in a way, because the other side saying go and take vaccine too, but they're saying with tongue in cheek. If you sit down and talk with them, it'll add one message coming out.
There you go.
Well, you understand me? People
Yeah.
understand one thing. So to that extent, I can see, and believe you me, it's happening even in the United States now with a great political divide also. So we should have learned from that and say, listen, this thing I'm not talking, it makes sense in terms of a pandemic. Even if you gotta find a way, another way to do that, you got to want to come out with a single voice where the country is totally politically divided, and and actually divided almost in numbers. So you had to do that, because you got to put you are there. Governments are not there to govern, if people could have had their security and all other things done without government pick up one pen, that is what should happen. Government is there to look after the people's security and good living and all of that. Governing is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself.
Yeah.
You are not there to govern nobody. You are there to look after their means and how they live and see that they live a good life. They didn't sign no social contract to, well, when we say social contract, you understand this hypothetical thing.
Right.
To society, to anybody to govern. As our friend Caruso said, men are born free, and everywhere they're in chains. And he was talking about government. Governments are putting them in chains because they know where they come from. So effectively, I am my situation is that the government is there to look after the interest of the people. The government should talk to the people. But normally, about 30%, I read, I did this when I was doing ministry work and I'm Minister of Health. About 30% of people normally don't want to take vaccine. The 70% that left there is not that they don't want, but the vaccine center is too far. All sorts of excuses they can make. They're not 30% is any hardcore that's saying we don't. But if you put the vaccine center close to them, if you give them a little incentive and so on, they will go along. You say you need 85% or something, 80% to have herd immunity. Well, I'll say to you that you can get there if you were you can get there if you were talking and so with people and explaining what is going, understanding clearly that there's a 30% that's more hard than the other. But we don't need all of them. A third of them might give us our herd immunity. And if we come together, we might get there.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not there to introduce all sorts of draconian measures to think people without first using the normal method of politics discourse.
Yeah. Henry, you serve with these guys in cabinet, so you know them up close, even if not personal. All right. I mean, Valda Lawrence said when she was Minister of Health, she invited Anthony to go on to the task force. What is it about these guys that is so hardline? They're taking this hardline position, even in the face of what's happening with COVID. Are we missing something here?
Yes. I think you are.
Tell us.
I think you are missing something. The PPP, in my view, is now at a stage where, as I pointed out to you, that it has to rule. Cherry Jagan is dead. That stage gone. Cherry Jagan, remember, would go through everything to discourse. Cherry Jagan sent the minister, the PSU during the thing to the ministry, open all the books, do all these things. This is governance. Cherry Jagan died. That died with Cherry Jagan. Janet Jagan is a different kettle of fish, and this is what remains. You got to fight. They go. But there's no end to this fighting. That is my point. There's no end. What are you going to do? What you're planning to do? You are, I mean, where's the end to this? And that's why I said, when Israeli determined that they are not going to have a two-state solution, they are where they are. That fighting going to go on there forever. The PPP must look at that and understand that is the road. It's either you make concessions and go along and have, because I put aside any notion of dividing the country at this stage. But I'm saying, unless you want to share governance with some people that have sufficient numbers to cause problem for governance, all you will ever get up and say every morning, I did what the best I could in the circumstances. And that is what the PPP been doing for the longest while. But that's not what Guyana wants. Guyana wants you to work for optimality, not have optimal development out of our resources. Not to sit down and tell people that I've done what I can in these circumstances. So effectively, that's where you are.
Mm-hmm. The Bureau of Statistics recently came out with some numbers. They said that the prices of food have gone up 14% in the first 7 months of this year. Cost of living 5.4%. First of all, what impact? Tell us what impact you think that's having on the ordinary working people of the country, and what could be done, secondly, to really ease the situation for them.
There are numerous reasons this thing is happening. It's happening. COVID has brought that kind of thing to almost every country. Transportation and all of this thing. Again, we come back to the same story. People can bear their chief to a point, but they must feel that what is being distributed is distributed evenly. Even if the government was the poorest government in the universe, they must feel that what's distributed is distributed evenly. You can't have, for instance, people saying, I don't know, people, once you go into these political parties and you are in this sort of jobs, people say, yeah, people still watching me and say, y'all, like if I got like my baby, yeah, give sugar workers $250,000 and public servants gang, all these sort of things you're hearing. I'm saying to you, $1,000 to the sugar workers are nothing. I believe what was done to them was wrong myself, and there was nothing. But you got to do something for the other side. You can't just say, give the sugar worker $1,000 and got public servants waiting for the increases. You got to be sufficiently political to sit down and realize that would not wash. But I don't believe that PPP cares anymore to win this kind of support they cannot win in Guyana. They have now concluded they can't win in Guyana.
And the normal political conclusion then is that if they've come to that conclusion and they're going to govern in the divisive in which they're governing, then you're looking for confrontation, which I don't think the majority of Guyanese want. So where does that leave the country?
But I just told you, it's not a question of what the majority of Guyana want. Guyana is that kind of country. You get where you get in Israel, you're going to end up fighting. There's no question that is what's going to happen. Guyana always was in a kind of low-level confrontation, low-level thing all the time. Guyana is Guyana's history. I mean, hundreds of people died in the 50s and 60s, and people still dying. Boston, all these people, Shaka Blair, what I'm saying to you is that this will continue at some point. The Henry's the thing would continue. It would leave at a low level, or it will come back to a higher level until the political issue is solved. There's very little. Nobody who wants to live like this. Who wants to live in a country where for a chance you got a break because Venezuela chase Exxon and Exxon need to come to Guyana. Now they're finding oil and mass in Guyana. Now now you got a break. Instead of you managing this properly, you fighting among each other for political power. That's gonna get nobody anywhere in terms of this continuous bickering.
Dr. Henry Jeffery there, saying it as it is. The kind of governance that we have now can only lead to what most of us do not want. But if you look around the country, look around the world, and we look at countries similar to Guyana, and Henry, you said there's only about 6 of them, right? Like the Guyana, we see where it leads. Tell you what, we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll continue to talk with Henry Jeffery about the issues and politics of our time within the context of democracy and autocracy.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.
I'm David Hines, political activist and commentator. If you're looking for informed discussion on Guyanese politics, you must join me every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 6:30 on Politics 101 with Dr. David Hines. On that program, I interview policymakers, politicians, political activists on Guyanese politics in the past and the present. So make sure you tune in to Politics 101 on CAMS TV at 6:30 every Tuesday and Thursday. And on Mondays at 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 p.m., you can join me for Hindsight. On that program, I give my take on politics. And then you can call in and talk to me about the politics in Guyana, the Caribbean, and the rest of the world. That's Monday evenings at 7 o'clock. And so here we go. Monday, 7 o'clock, you can join me. On Tuesday at 6:30, Politics 101. On Thursdays at 6:30, Politics 101. And if you haven't gotten enough of me by then, you can catch me on Tuesday mornings on the Buxtonian Morning Time with Kedati Amsterdam, where we rap about politics also. And that's at 7 o'clock in the morning on Hams TV. All of these programs are on Hams TV. So catch me Monday, on Tuesday, on Thursday, and you get all you want to know about Guyanese politics.
I know some of you wouldn't believe me, but if a liar asks my good friend Mackie,
Thank you very much and welcome back to Politics 101 Town Hall meeting with Aubrey Norton on Monday. Please make sure you get registered for it. It's not Monday, on Tuesday, sorry. That Town Hall meeting on Tuesday. Please make sure you get registered so you can get in to the room to chat with Mr. Norton. And tonight, of course, we're talking with Dr. Henry Jeffery, and we're talking about the politics of today. We're talking about all the issues that have occurred over the last couple of weeks, and we're doing so within the context of what Jeffrey calls autocracy and democracy. Dr. Jeffery, you recently said that the PNC should forego the notion of the maximum leader and move to a more collective leadership. What was your thinking behind that? And what do you think the outcomes would be?
I think, first of all, you got to look at the country, where the country is going. Half the problem for the PPP is that the country is going that way, as a matter of fact. You have a country that is now moving into what we'll call a multi-ethnic society with multi-ethnic voting. The concept of a maximum leader projects as one person of an ethnicity as the leader of the party for a start. But to win maximum support at this point of time, you will need not only African votes of the people of African ethnicity, but other people. And therefore, it would be best, in my view, if you can come to some thing of a collective leadership, which demonstrates to the public, even before you come to government, that you intend to rule in a manner that will be fair and equitable to all the people in Guyana. Indeed, I will say, you can have a kind of rotation of the given leader on a year. I think the WPA tried something like this, and even the AFC, every year. So people are seeing people of their ethnicity as the leader of this party, regardless of which group constitute the biggest block of this party. So throw away this thing about maximum dictatorial leader who can run around doing what they want, walk the stage, and that's the world has changed. Most of these countries, Britain, all of them, Europe is a bit like that, but they too will change and become more, because they'll have to accommodate their ethnicities within them. And we have that problem with us now. Let us be clever. Let us use our ingenuity, and let us build on from the party right now, do something like that. The PPP should do it itself, but once in government, that's going to be difficult. But what I'm saying, that you are where you are, you have the opportunity to do just that.
Aubrey Norton is vying to become the leader of the party. Do you think, given what you just said, the atmosphere, the conditions, where the country is going, where the world is going, do you think that he is the right type of leader for this time? Do you think he has the capacity to move the party in that direction that you're talking about, or to lead the party in that direction? I may say.
I think he could. I think he could. I've spoken to Aubrey. I've spoken to people in the leadership of the PNC. I've spoken to Aubrey, like I speak to everybody. And yes, I think he could. But this is never a one-man thing too, because there are going to always be people say, they ain't gonna work, all we know. You got to have somebody to lead you. You got to song and dance. But what I'm saying to you, yes, once he takes it on board, and I have a feeling that they are thinking about this kind of operation, and it will, yes, he can do it. Why not? I saw Valder making the statement that you just made. Where are we going? This confrontation don't go anywhere. It wouldn't go anywhere. The great trouble with that is that nobody wants to go where this is going. This is a natural outcome of the context in which you live. And therefore, yes, it's not, but that means that you have to position yourself in a different way to prevent it from going there. And that is what the PNC has to do today. It has a good chance. It has a good chance. The PPP is in government, and PPP is not as autocratic as everybody maybe think it is. It becomes autocratic. It's more autocratic now, I believe, than it ever has been. But PPP, up to today, I believe that if Mr. Jagdio wants to win something, he got to go with it. He got to go well organized, but he will go with something. He will win it because of how he will structure everything. Because they all try that thing, both parties. So effectively, yes, but it's more autocratic. But today, what you need is that, so they are not going to get involved in this kind of exercise. But just like all the exercise with the doing primaries got you into government in a sense, this kind of exercise, I believe, would demonstrate to the people of Guyana that they are not going to be led by any one individual, one ethnicity, and move Guyana forward.
How would another try at coalition politics? The APNU plus AFC, the APNU first, and then the APNU AFC. These were tried as a kind of halfway towards what you are talking about. And obviously, given the fragmentation that we have seen now, it hasn't worked. Do you think it's worth trying again?
But no, I'm saying this in the context of a coalition government. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying this outside the context. The PNC is a party, but when the PNC comes to the table to speak to the other, you must do this in the context of a coalition arrangement. I'm saying this in the context of a coalition arrangement. But then that should really also percolate down to the coalition relations, and so people can see and you can talk to them about different Guyana. Where we're going is not good. We have resources for the first time, but it's going all over the place. People believe when they wake up, we are doing this. Money. The question is not money. You can spend. Don't tell me how much you're spending on anything. Show me the results. Show me the results. Show me what you intend to gain and what we have actually gained. Don't wake up in the morning and tell me I spend $1 billion on this and I build 20 billion on that. Show me what you intended to gain before you spend the 20 billion and what is the result of your spending that 20 billion. I am not going to wait for the 5 years to show me, because you should have had some sort of matrix to say in 2 months we're going to, well, now maybe months. In a year, this should have happened in a year, and then we'll know if you'll get there in 5 years. So tell me you're spending money is a waste of time. You're just spending my money, but I must know what you are spending it to gain in actual terms for me. And I would want then for you to tell me and show to the opposition and everybody today think that you have gained that. Don't wake up every morning and tell me you're spending, I spend this, I spend. Ordinary people think this is good because they're in the opposition out there not making a whole not nice about it. But it's foolishness. Spending is not the issue. The issue is your spending is also a means to an end. And it's the end I want to see. And I want to see in a progressive way.
Uh-huh. The PPP has recently been defending itself against charges of racism at the level of government. The president and vice president were in New York defending themselves in the wake of the Boston shooting. They've been defending themselves. First, are the charges not justified? And is the PPP really doing a good job of convincing us that they're not what they're being accused of?
Let me put it this way, that's what political parties are there to do, defend themselves against these charges. But I'm saying, if you are going to have the greatest problem the PPP faces, this nonsensical thing they took over and saying they're not going to talk to the opposition. It must be the biggest mistake they ever made in politics. Biggest. Because there's nothing they can do that I cannot transfer into something wrong. And it's not sufficient. And it's done incompetently. There's nothing no political party in this country can do that I cannot sit down and show that it could have been done better. And if you are leaving me out there as the opposition to do that, and then you're going to say, oh, we are not doing these things. Well, that's the context in which you're operating. It's not a question of whether or not I believe all this wild spending is not good. I am saying that if you're going to be spending, you must spend on generational and generic infrastructure, and you got to demonstrate to me that these things can last for 30 years and all of that in terms of our oil resources. Don't tell me you're building more roads, because you've always been building more roads, and every 3 years they're gone. So effectively, unless you can do that, you are not telling me anything. But you have to remember that there is nothing that you can do, that the people can do, that I can't turn against them, so to speak. So it's not a question is whether or not they're right or wrong. It's a question that they find themselves in a context where they can always be wrong, because they're not talking to people and they don't know what they're doing.
Lots of people on the opposition side are calling on their leaders to be more forthright. Some of them are calling on their leaders to be extreme in their responses to what's going on in the government. I find myself here sometimes being boxed in by viewers who want a certain kind of extreme reaction to what's going on in the PPP, what's going on in the country. And lots of time the leaders come under heavy fire. Your thoughts on that dynamic?
There is half this country that believes at this stage that the PPP is not working for them. If that half of the country that believes that the people not working for them, and then the people are being shot, and all sort of things are happening to them, and they're not getting any regress in terms of conclusion to these matters, what do you think they're going to do? That's why I told you, this thing is not Guyana. You understand, it's not a simple Guyana situation. Every place that you have had these kind of problems and you have not sit down to deal with this problem seriously, has ended up in quarrel, wars, underlying tensions, and so on. So, I mean, what do you think going to happen?
Do you think, Henry, Mr. Granger is going to run for the leadership of his party for another term? And if so, if you were his advisor, would you advise him not to?
No. If I was his advisor, he wouldn't have been doing the nonsense he's done. But furthermore, outside of that, I would have had to find out clearly from him why is it that he intends to stay. You see, he must have a reason for staying. I am not willing to jump the thing, you know. I can't see the reason. Therefore, it's easy for me to say, yeah,
Got
yeah, you
you.
should take a walk. But he's not a stupid man. So if he says I'm going to run, he must have a reason for running. So my first thing was to say, don't run. I won't say that to anybody here. I would say, Chief, please tell me why you are running, what you intend to gain from this. Not taking up two old little parties you yourself make maybe on your desk one day and saying they join and seem to make them like as if the WPA got same weight as the WPA. I hope that's not a game. But but seriously, that would be my thing. I am not going to be saying that what he's doing is wrong because I don't know why he's doing it. It appears to me that makes no sense, but so I don't have all the sense in the world. I don't have much of it anyway. But the point of it that I would have to say, Chief, why are you doing this? Please explain to me in some detail. And then we can sit down and have a nice discourse of why you should or should not do it. If you're saying makes sense or it doesn't make sense.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here saying it like it is. We've been going for an hour and a half. It's program time, and we've got Dr. Jeffrey to give us his take on all the issues facing us. We started the program with some theoretical stuff and so on, but not theoretical in the abstract sense, theoretical enough for all of us to follow the conversation. Henry, it's always a pleasure chatting. Closing thoughts.
Well, let me first of all hope that that we can get together as a people truly, because it's the only way to go, and come to some conclusion. I know that is not going to happen just like that, but I believe largely because the PNC now in opposition, it has a chance. It has an opportunity to do things that can also help to move us towards that goal. I know Aubrey, I think that he has those kind of views. We have heard Valda saying that, where are we going with all of this? What we have heard from the PPP is a defensive and so on. So let me hope that people can really sit down and try to use this chance when we are finally going to get some resources to do things, not to help the Jeffries of this world, because they must be taking a walk in any case, but to help our children, grandchildren, and Guyana.
There you have it. Henry Jeffrey, Dr. Henry Jeffrey, giving us his take on contemporary politics. Dr. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on. And to you, the audience who stayed for an hour and a half, I want to thank you also. You're always so good to this program. I've been trying to read some of the comments. They're, of course, as usual, on the spot. Remember, on Tuesday, we are going to have Aubrey Norton himself. He is featured tonight here. His name has come up. He has gotten the nod of approval as far as being one of the persons, if not the person in the PNC, to lead the party in a certain direction, to open up back the coalition, and let us see where we will go. So we're going to have Aubrey here on a town hall meeting. This is not a campaign event for Aubrey Norton, as some people are asking in the audience. No, this is not a campaign event. This is a Politics 101 event, Politics 101 event. And we are prepared to do the same thing for other candidates who would want to vie for the leadership of the party. So we are doing this town hall not as a campaign event for Aubrey Norton. I am working People's Alliance. I'm at the WPA. as far as party is concerned. So we're not doing party thing here. What we're doing here is politics. Yes, this program is biased towards the opposition. That's fine. I as an opposition man, but it's not. It's not a campaign event for Norton. It's a Politics 101 event, so that we can have Aubrey Norton, whose name has been endorsed by many of you, to come here and to answer your questions. Again, if you wish to get into the room to ask your questions, you're going to get a registration link for you. But while we're waiting on that registration link, if you want to get into the room, please inbox Pirati or myself, and we're going to ensure that you get into that room. Those of you who would want, as we said, to make a contribution to the program so that we can broadcast the town hall, not just here on Facebook, but broadcast it on broadcast TV, you can make that donation by the regular channels here. But donation is not a prerequisite in the show. We just want to clear that up because some people seem to be suggesting that. No, you wish to get in, we're going to have by tomorrow morning a registration link that you can go and get registered. Like I said, those who would wish to make a donation, you can do so by the channels there. And please inbox me, Orkidaki, and we're going to ensure that you get in to the room. Good night. You've been very good to us. I hope we've been extremely good to you. David Hines, signing out. Good night.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.